Hi, everyone. I don't know what happened. It seems like the video stopped midway, but I think you also get the point. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar. I am Laura Worm, and I will be your moderator today. With me, I have two wonderful colleagues, Julie Smith and Steve Ball, who you will also be hearing from. But before we get to that, we have a few practicalities. We are a lot of us here today, and we're really grateful for that and just as excited as you are to learn much more about the blockchain. We will be recording this part of the presentation where we present what blockchain is and how you can get on board it. We will therefore not be taking questions during this part of the webinar. We will have a Q&A of roughly 15 to 20 minutes at the end. We will pause the recording there and then we'll go through your questions. Now, because there are so many of us, we also anticipate that we might not be able to get through all of the questions today, and we're sorry for that in advance. So you can upvote questions in the Q&A, meaning that if there's somebody who's asked a question that you really wanted to ask, then please place a vote on it, because we will tackle the questions as the most burning ones first. So the ones with most votes, we will take first. If we do not get to your question, we will take them and use them to inform our FAQ, which is already available on our website and will be updated on the basis of this webinar within the next few weeks. The recordings of this webinar will be placed on fsc.org/blockchain as well. So you should, as soon as it's processed, be able to go back and recap or share if you need to. So with that, why don't we just get started and get into the meat of this. So today we're here to talk about a technology, but we won't just be looking at this through a technology lens. We would like for you to also look at this through the lens of what this technology can do to help support our mission, which is to safeguard the forest for future and present generations. Now, we are maybe the leader in forest certification worldwide. We are the spearhead of how you can actually ensure sustainable forest management. But luckily, we're not alone in this mission. We are seeing a very rapidly rising tide towards environmental protection, with forests receiving a special focus. Most notably, we are seeing a lot of new upcoming legislations from the European Union and from other regions, which are setting unprecedented demands for which kind of transparency do you need to have in your supply chains. To add to that, we're also seeing a rapid increase in commitments towards voluntary standards such as net zero or science-based targets. All of this is a really welcome step towards an actual sustainable management of our natural resources. However, they also bring a new set of challenges with increased demand for companies to have greater transparency and to have a whole set of data elements that we haven't been used to being needed. At FSC, we recognize this, and we want to do our best to help support you in getting those data that you need. So we are not going to talk about EUDR today or the European Deforestation Regulation, but I am willing to bet that many of the ones who are here today are here either directly or indirectly because of EUDR. We won't be diving into what FSC's response to EUDR is. We have had a series of webinars already on this, and I'll post links to that in the chat as soon as I'm done with my part of the presentation. The reason why we are still mentioning EUDR here is because it's raising the bar for all of us. It is requiring a new level of data gathering and supply chain knowledge than we're all used to. And as a result, it's currently driving both our entire community, but also us as an organization to move towards the next step in the next level in chain of custody and due diligence. I'm quite sure that all of you will know this, which is an illustration of what an FSC supply chain looks like, with forest management in the beginning, chain of custody in the middle, and promotional licenses towards the end. Now, the challenge is that this typical chain of custody that we used to have, and Steve, can you give me the animation for the next couple of ones, because I can't seem to shift them. There we go. Okay. So the challenge is that chain of custody alone won't enable us to trace the levels of data that we have to be able to meet the EUDR. So for example, we don't in our current system have any ability for a forest owner to upload or provide geolocation and time of harvest and have that travel throughout the entire chain of custody supply chain. At the same time, we also don't have any means for data items to travel along the supply chain without revealing every single actor inside the supply chain. And that makes it really difficult if you're towards the end of a supply chain and you want to obtain origin data about your product. You want to know where it actually comes from, and you need these types of data points. It's virtually impossible with the setup that we have today. So therefore, we as FSC have been working on solutions for this for quite a number of years, not only working with GIS or with digital audit reports, but also with blockchain. And blockchain has really is really what enables us to tie all of this together. It's at the heart of all of our solutions. And because of EUDR, we have ramped up our process and the whole implementation of this. So with that, I will give over the word to Steve Ball to tell you a bit more about what blockchain is, how it works in FSC, and then later Julie Smith will be presenting to you what the support functionality looks like. How do you actually get on board the blockchain? When can you get on board the blockchain? And also, what could you do already now as you wait for us to get ready to let you in? So with that, Steve, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thanks, Loa, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you are. My name is Steve Ball. I'm a strategic technology senior expert at FSC and been overseeing most of my work on FSC blockchain. I just a sort of advance apologies. My throat is not so good this morning. I really hope I'm going to make it through this webinar, but please bear with me if I sound a little bit off. So, what will FSC blockchain enable us to do? I think it's really summed up in this slide. So we've got a product here. We've taken a fairly simple example of a chair, which has got components from 4 different forests. So when you get to that final product, how do you know where it's come from? How can we trace the harvest locations and time of harvest, which is also important in EUDR and other regulatory requirements, from the original point of harvest all the way through to that final product, and attach all of that data. And it's not just that data. Once we can associate some data, of course, we can associate many other pieces of data. And allowing all of that data to move along the chain, that is what traceability is all about, and this is what we are trying to achieve with FSC blockchain. So, as I just really said, it's about transmitting product data along the supply chain. And let's take an example of that, the practical, simple case. So here we've got a very simple supply chain. Starts with one forest, goes through a sawmill, factory, processor, and ends in a retailer. At the forest level, we collect the data on the geolocation and time of harvest. We also, of course, know what species, whether one or multiple species that we felled. And we know what volume we are selling to the sawmill going onwards. So the sawmill will receive all of that data, and this is what the blockchain does. So when you get a transaction on blockchain, the sawmill will receive all of the same data, which of course is pretty important to have anyway. So it will receive the geolocation and time and the species and the volume. And note that the geolocation and time and the species here have got sort of padlock symbol. What we're saying here is they're locked because you can't change that. That's already happened. So that data at this point now is locked. The volume isn't. Probably the forest owner perhaps didn't tell you all of the volume they harvested, and you're certainly going to have some wastage in the sawmill. So volumes go down as we go through the supply chain. But the same approach essentially takes us all the way through to the end. And at the end there, we have some data on each of these points at the retailer, and the retailer could supply it to a customer. You could imagine a QR code or something which could be scanned that would contain all of that information. Now, this was a very simple example. Of course, many of our supply chains are more complex and involve a degree of mixing. So here is a slightly more complex with 2 forests, both of which we get the geolocation, species, that's same as before, and 2 sawmills. So of course they receive the same data as before. But now at the factory level, we're going to combine that. So now, and by the way, I haven't shown the volume on this slide because it's only so much data we can manage to show on one slide without confusing you. But here the factory, when they receive these 2 components and then combine them into one, now when they sell on to their customer, and indeed customer's customer, that geolocation species data is combined, but it's still locked because nobody can change the species, nobody can change the geolocation. That all comes from the original forest. We can further complicate things. One of the great things about this kind of technology is it doesn't matter whether you have 3 suppliers or 3,000 suppliers. The same software solution will work and keep track of all of the data for you. So for those sorts of supply chains like paper and pulp, where this stuff does get very complicated, then the same solution can apply for you. Within the FSC system, of course, we don't just deal in FSC 100% products. We also have controlled wood. That is a very important component of our standards ecosystem. And that works quite similar. So here we've gone back to that simple, or relatively simple supply chain of 2 different forests. But the difference is controlled wood bit is that the controlled wood supplier themselves are not FSC certified. Instead, we have a due diligence system that's implemented by the chain of custody certificate holder. At this point, I suppose that's being done by the sawmill 2B. So they still need that data, but they will need to get it manually from their supplier. At a later date, I think we would like to be able to offer direct access to FSC blockchain for those controlled wood suppliers, but that's not something which will be coming in the initial releases later this year. And then, of course, once we've got this, everything else just goes the same as before. So before I go any further, perhaps a very quick note about what is blockchain technology. You will have heard about it probably in relation to things like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Why are we using it? Well, blockchain technology provides an immutable ledger. What that means is once a transaction has been written to that ledger, it cannot be changed or unwritten. And so that gives us, it's really useful for tracking this sort of supply chain stuff and with a very high degree level of integrity. But a big difference to how we're implementing it to how Bitcoin and these cryptocurrencies implement it is we are using what's known as a consortium blockchain, which doesn't suffer from the same problems of how do you work out how to agree on what the sort of the current status of that ledger is. And it's that process for agreeing between all different nodes which consumes a huge amount of energy in Bitcoin. We won't have that problem, so don't be worried about the energy consumption of FSC blockchain. So what kind of data will we get into FSC blockchain? This is a screenshot of one of our screens, and we do have a demo coming up shortly, but let's just walk through it quickly. So we will get data on the product type following the FSC product categorization. You can also enter data on the HS code, which of course is useful for those regulatory compliance. We need to know the species, and it will verify that species from your supplier. We need to know the quantity, whether that's tracked in volume or mass or weight metrics, you choose, but we do of course need to have some measure of quantity. We allow entry of the recording of the geolocation, And harvest timing, that only applies if you're a forest manager. If you're further down the chain, then you don't get to enter that data. It's already done. And if you are, though, lower down that supply chain, then we will record the country in which your operations are taking place, because we need to know the country of processing. That's important for compliance. And finally, there will be the option to upload further data. That I think is really important from a sort of legality perspective. And a lot of these regulations also require evidence that you have followed the applicable laws in country of origin. So you will be able to attach harvesting permits, export licenses, anything else that's relevant to the transaction that you are making. Now, how does a trade get verified in FSC blockchain? The key thing about the system we are implementing is that both the seller and the buyer need to agree. You can't just have the data entered by one side. And both parties need to enter that data. And then we perform a number of checks to see that it matches. And they need to agree on the following things are listed there on the right. The FSC license codes, essentially that means you know who you sold it to and they know who they bought it from. The invoice date, the product classification according to the FSC system, the species, and the quantity within some small margin of error. And if all of that is agreed, then the transaction is written, is matched, and the details are written to the blockchain. Now, particularly early on in the adoption of FSC blockchain, it's very possible that you will have trading partners who are not yet on blockchain, in which case the transaction will stay on the sort of the pre-blockchain database and as unmatched. It doesn't mean anything bad has happened. It just necessarily may mean that your trading partner isn't yet using the system. But if your trading partner is, then you will have the opportunity to go in and check and try and work out, maybe one of you made a mistake on the species or the quantity, and then you can work that out and correct it, and then the match will be made. So that's how data gets onto FSC blockchain. So coming up next slide, we've got a nice little demo video showing you how that transaction data all works and the matching. But just a very quick note beforehand that video starts from a position of you as a user already having set up and configured FSC blockchain. And in particular, two things you need to have done. First, you need to have configured the products that you buy and the products you sell. Often, of course, they won't be the same. And you need to configure who your trading partners are, so who you're buying, who you're selling to. So once you've got all that data configured, then you can start entering transactions. And here we go.
In this video, I will show you how purchases or sales are uploaded and matched between two trading companies. Now, in most companies, this will of course happen primarily in bulk, meaning uploading an Excel spreadsheet with multiple claims, or by an API integration. But for the sake of demonstration, we will show you how it's done on the website, just so you can see how it works. Now, I will be the purchasing end of this transaction. I will be buying logs from a forest owner. So when I go to record a trade, I can either do a purchase, I can do a manufacturing run, or what is called a processing run, meaning I am taking one input product and transforming it into an output product. For example, I'm taking these logs and I'm creating a chair out of them. Or I can make a sales. But because I'm purchasing, I will go to purchase transaction. And when I go to purchase a transaction, this page will appear. And what I need to do here is now to identify who am I trading with. I am trading with the forest owner, Liam's Forest. I will need to insert the document ID. This would typically be your invoice number. Let me just put one in here. That is a unique identifier. I need to insert the date of the transaction. Let's say I just had this invoice today. And I need to insert a batch for this particular product. I then have to choose which type of product I have. In this case, it's logs that I have as my only thing that I registered buying. I need to choose which type of FSC. In this case, it's FSC 100%. And I need to insert how many of them am I buying. Let me see, I'm buying 295 logs. And then the system automatically calculates the total volume. I can, of course, choose to override the volume if it's different. I click submit. And now that transaction has been submitted, as you can see at the bottom, and it is now registered. Let us then navigate to Liam's Forest. We are now on Liam's Forest. And as you can see, we have a couple of unmatched transactions. One of them is the transaction that we just created when we were David. So let's record a sales that matches this purchase from David so that we can get it to be a matched claim. So let's see up here, you can see that right now we have a total of 13 matched and 3 unmatched claims. Let's try to get that number changed. Go to record a trade. And this time we are doing a sales transaction. Again, we say we are trading. This time it's with David. We have the exact same reference ID. It's the same invoice number, of course. And it's the same batch ID. Now, Liam has more products defined, which means that he can now choose between different products. It was logs that we were trading with. We were selling David 100% FSC, and we were selling him 295, which gave a total volume. So let's submit. It has now been submitted. If we navigate back to the dashboard, you can see that the 3 has now become a 2. We're to a total of 14 matched claims, and it has been removed from the number of unmatched claims. Of course, the vast majority of you who will be using the FSC blockchain will not have to do this manually by entering numbers. It will be through uploads or through API connections that automatically takes care of this information being moved in larger quantities. If we wanted to investigate a bit on this particular matched claim or potentially to correct it, we can, of course, also do that. To do so, we navigate to Product Ledger, and we can then find this particular claim inside of the ones that were registered. The particular one that we just registered is this one. So if we mark that here and we click I, we can now see that it is a match transaction. We can see the information that was typed connected to it, and we could make corrections if we needed to. So that's how easy it is to register and match a claim on FSC blockchain. Of course, most of this will be automated, but that's just to show you how the mechanics work.
Steve, I would like for you to just unmute yourself and start that slide over.
Thank you. Yes. Can you hear me now? Yeah, you can. So that's the technology not working. Thank you. I hope you found that video informative. One point I just wanted to highlight here, Loa did mention it on the video, is that there are multiple ways to get data into FSC blockchain. What Loa showed you was that option there, number 1 on the video, but in practice we expect most of the data to go in via bulk uploads, and eventually, certainly for larger companies, on API integration. And we know that will be really important in order to manage the volume of transactions that many companies have. Next, what I'd really like to talk about here, and it's very important for us because we think it's very important for many of our certificate holders, and that is this kind of transaction data is highly commercially sensitive and it should not be made public. So how are we handling that? All data that is uploaded to FSC blockchain, even just on the sort of pre-blockchain database, will be immediately encrypted. And it will be encrypted with a key that is unique to you as a certificate holder. That means nobody else can read it, including us in FSC. Having uploaded it, we call you the data owner. It's your data, you put it on the FSC blockchain. And you can then share who gets access with it. You can decide who gets access via a data sharing mechanism. And there is quite a lot of detail on how that can happen, in particular, because if you're a large company, you'll be getting lots of these requests, and simply responding to them on an individual request by request basis, we expect will be quite difficult for you. So we're setting up a rules-based system, which you can use a bit like sort of email sorting rules, and then that you can use that to decide who would get access to the data that you put up there. And very importantly, data sharing that you have given out, you can revoke at any later date at your choice. Of course, once you've shared it, you don't know what your downstream trading partners might have done with it, but you can at least stop further sharing. What do those rules allow you to do? So you can choose what to share. So you could decide to keep your supplier confidential, but share everything else. You might want to share specifically just origin data. You might want to share some of those attached documents like the legality documentation talked about earlier, and you can choose which categories you share. And you could share risk assessments and mitigating actions that are important for showing due diligence in line with EUDR or other regulatory requirements. You can choose the basis of sharing, whether it's on a per transaction basis or for customers. And you can choose whether your customer can onwardly share that data without coming back to you for agreement for each downstream customer, or whether you allow that data transparency now to flow all the way down the supply chain. And you can choose the time frame that all of this is covered by. So hopefully a lot of flexibility in there for you to control when and how that data might be shared. So where are we with blockchain? This slide gives you a indicative timeline of when we expect the developments to be happening. The important thing is around the middle of this year, there should be a rollout to all certificate holders. You should get access to it and to be able to start playing with it. The full functionality to support compliance with the likes of EUDR may not be fully there at that point, but we think this is such an important tool that we want to get it into everybody's hands as soon as possible. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Julie. Julie, you're muted.
Consistent as ever. Thank you very much, Steve, and hello to everybody. My name is Julie Smith. I'm the Senior Project Manager responsible for blockchain, and I'm also the lead on the beta trials for blockchain. So as you heard from Steve, data gathering and information sharing is the core of what happens in FSC blockchain. As a useful first step, therefore, it's useful to begin by exploring your organization's data readiness and establishing whether your organization's information is up to date, accurate and accessible. You may also wish to begin encouraging or engaging with your certified trading partners in the data readiness exercises in anticipation of the full blockchain rollout. We will be publishing the data templates as soon as they're ready for general rollout on our website. Next slide, please. So as part of FSC's innovative journey, we're initiating these beta trials for the blockchain platform. The trials are crucial to us in testing the system, allowing FSC to optimize functionality based on certificate holder insights. We have been actively gathering expressions of interest, and I know we do have a couple of questions on that in the chat already, to participate in these beta trials. And a number of organizations have already been invited to join us. Current participants can invite up to 3 trading partners of their choice, ensuring that we establish a great, diverse and comprehensive testing ground for FSC blockchain. And our goal is to make sure the trials encompass a broad range of product sectors, traded commodities and geographies. And whilst it's not always possible to include everybody who's expressed interest, we're keen to expand the user base over the coming months. And should you wish to register your interest in the beta trials, you'll find a link in the question 12 of the FAQs, which can be found at FSC Blockchain FSC.org/blockchain. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we know that adopting new technologies can be a complex and challenging process. Supporting this and our certificate holders, we'll be providing comprehensive training resources containing all the information required to implement FSC blockchain, as well as details on how to provide feedback and stay updated on future developments. The toolkit that will be available to certificate holders will include recurring webinars, training videos. It will provide insights and expert answers to frequently asked questions. We'll also publish guidance material, ensuring users have the knowledge and confidence to implement blockchain when it's fully rolled out. We recognise as well that supporting new technology is crucial at rollout, and that we will address that with the unique needs of different groups. So questions for troubleshooting IT specialists, and I know we have a couple of highly technical questions in the chat already, and also clarifications raised by compliance officers. So our experts will be able to answer those questions. So any of the issues that arise, we'll also have a dedicated help desk available. As the user base expands, we will also be keeping an eye on that and scaling the support as necessary. Our goal is to ensure that every stakeholder can feel confident in implementing this system and securing the knowledge that we will have support services available. Next slide, please. So, undoubtedly, the value of blockchain increases the more of your supply chain begin using it. However, there are some benefits to be achieved as soon as you implement this system. The first is automatic verification of your supplier status, certificate status. You'll, in other words, no longer have to monitor and screenshot your verification of certification status for your suppliers. The second benefit is adoption of some of the requirements of FSC chain of custody certification. You'll get automated volume summaries, species and product group lists based on purchases and sales claims, even if your trading partners aren't using FSC blockchain from the outset. The third benefit is automated verification of products against the certificate scope of your trading partners. You'll be able to view whether your trading partners terminated or suspended more easily than you can today. When your suppliers, down to the forest level, use FSC blockchain, you'll get the ability to inherit crucial data points such as time of harvest and geolocation. And of course, you have the ability to share additional data through your supply chain if you use the additional data fields. Next slide, please. So there's a lot more information available on fsc.org/blockchain, including the recording of this webinar, as Loa mentioned at opening, once it's processed. You'll also find the extensive FAQs where we reply to many of the questions that we've already received. And I'm sure from today, we'll have a lot more that remain unanswered and they'll be added to the FAQ. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Loa, for the question and answer session.